Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrators Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Mayo. Steve, welcome.
Welcome. First day of spring. How are you, David?
We're taping this on the first day of
Wonderful
spring.
day.
Yeah, it's about time. Now if the weather will just be more spring-like.
More spring-like, no snow. That's what we want for the
Yep.
rest of the year. Maybe a little dusting in December, but that's it.
Just before Christmas.
Just before Christmas.
Gone after New Year's.
Gone.
Which, is some of what we'll talk about today. This is part 2 of our annual town meeting preview. And we were talking about money last month, and one of the things we had started to touch on was revenues. And how are revenues looking for this year?
Well, by and large, revenues are looking good. And when I talk about revenues looking good, I mean non-real estate tax revenues. I mean, real estate tax revenues are very stable. We know that it's going to be, 73, 74 million. We know that in our budget. It's I think we collect 99.9% of it, so it's a very, very stable part of our formula. And I'm thankful we are that that's stable because everything else isn't.
Sure.
Other important part of revenue is other revenues that we have coming in, mainly excise taxes on cars. So now that is one where that number is probably in the $3+ million range a year on its own. Other revenues, which are fees, building fees, and items that are turned in, those bring that number up to about between 6 and 7 million every year. But cars is the volatile part of that. And what's important to remember is that it's when the economy is good, people are buying new cars, right? It's great. People are buying new cars. They're leasing new cars, and there's still a excise tax into that. However, that number goes down every year that you own the car.
Right.
So thankfully it does, as all of us who own cars.
I was just
right?
going to say,
We're very, very
that's the part
thankful.
I like every year is hold on to the same car. And
So it's unlike other taxes, but maybe people like this. Real estate taxes are, every year, if nothing happened, right, real estate taxes would go up by 2.5% in the town of Wakefield, and in every town that is within 2.5. Cars, excise tax, if nothing happened, no one bought any new cars, no one turned in a car, everyone kept the same car they did the year before, that tax revenue would go down. So that is kind of the conundrum that it's in when we look at these other revenues. We spend a lot of time with the Finance Committee to make sure that all the revenues that we project going out, we have a history and we see what's going on. And Chairman of the Finance Committee, Dan Sherman, does a great spreadsheet on that we, look at. Kevin Gill, our town accountant, has a view on it, as do I. And we've been under projecting and overperforming on those other revenues every year, which is, I'd rather have that than the other way.
Right.
Because all that means is that we're building, more free cash at the end of the day, which will roll back into the budget. So when the economy's good, people are adding on to the houses or building new houses. There's big fees, or commercial developments are big fees on there. People are buying cars or leasing cars. More people are moving into Wakefield with some of the developments, so that's more excise tax. So all those things we project as being pretty good, but excise tax is always one that worries you, because there was a year there during the Great Recession where that number, nosedived, and it had an effect across the whole economy, and that was when the Obama administration came up with the, what's it called, cash for clunkers sort of thing. So they kind of spurred that, that's that part of the economy for the car sales. And it helped municipalities in Massachusetts as well, because people were buying new cars and excise taxes were going up. And so it had a real trickle-down effect. So that's one that we worry about a little bit.
The other one, and we talk about this each year, and each year around this time, the answer is, and that's state aid.
We throw the dart right at the bull, see what we come up with, where it sticks in the wall.
The so-called cherry sheets.
Yeah, and they're cherry because they used to come out on red paper.
Yeah.
Now you get it emailed, so it's not as fun as it was anymore. as it was in those days, and you'd wait for the mail to come in. Actually, not too
But
too
the
long
term
ago.
has
But
stayed. Yep.
the term has stayed.
Sure.
So anyways, the way the budget process works on Beacon Hill is the governor in January presents his budget, and that'll have local aid numbers in it. That's also called the House 1 budget. So that's where it starts at. Then there are a lot of budget discussions and hearings at the State House. Usually there's money added in recent times to things like Chapter 70, which is our school department for children, for school aid. Maybe there's some other items. The other big ticket item is unrestricted local aid.
Right.
Governor Baker has said that will go up the same percentage that the overall economy revenues have gone up for the state of Massachusetts. So that has stayed consistently moved up. But the big bugaboo in that, and it's about, for state aid is 10,500,000, 70% of it, or 65% of it, is Chapter 70, which is school aid. My contention over the last maybe 20 years has been that Wakefield does not get its fair share of Chapter 70 funds.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because there's talk now about changing that whole formula at the state level. Is that a concern for communities like Wakefield?
Well, no, it's not a concern, because the part of the changing of that formula, or the premise around that, is that the state will say that there's a certain percentage of educational budget that needs to be paid for, a certain minimum percent that needs to be paid for by cities and towns. And we're well above the minimum in Wakefield that we pay for our education, and we should. That's a very important part of what we do. However, that number that you're trying to get, that percentage you're trying to get to, has been understated. So the state, in saying what you should pay for education as the community of Wakefield, hasn't added in the higher cost of health care, hasn't the retirement costs, some other costs that you have to pay because you have teachers, you have superintendents, you have principals, you have paraprofessionals, you have aides, you have people like custodians, you have all these people that are part of education.
Sure.
Okay? And you're not really counting what the cost is to provide that education, because there are those other benefits that go along with it. So the Foundation Budget Committee at the State House has looked at this and has come out with that analysis. But what that means is that every community should get more money, and I'm thrilled with that, and that every community is going to get a lot more money, but it has to come from somewhere. That means the state has to have that money. So there has to be a revenue source for them on the other side.
Right.
If that were to be fully funded, the numbers I've looked at, it'll have to be phased in. Wakefield could be looking at Chapter 70 funding of an increase of $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, which would be a game changer in how we provide services to our children and to the town, and services to the town whole. But there's got to be a funding source at the state level to do that. So in starting, your premise was, would Wakefield get more? Yes. But I do think initially the increase in Chapter 70 would go to some of your poorer communities, some of your gateway poorer communities. And that's okay. I mean, I understand that, and I think that's what Chapter 70 was for, to create that equal playing field.
Help them bring
bring
up to the same level as
level
everyone
here.
else.
What really frosts me, and I've had discussions with the state delegation on this, is that when you look at similarly demographic communities, and I'll say Wakefield, Reading, Melrose, okay? If Wakefield received the same per pupil as Melrose did, today, we'd be probably getting $1 million plus more in Chapter 78, just per pupil. I mean, and if they have more pupils, they're going to get more. But I'm looking at a per pupil reimbursement.
Sure.
If it was Reading, we'd probably in the $2.5 million range. So to me, that's where the formula falls apart. And that's the item that they need to look at. I agree with let's raise all boats. That's wonderful. But maybe not all boats. Some boats are already higher off the water.
Right.
So maybe they don't have to be raised as much. So it's an interesting question, an interesting conundrum. But that's going to take a few years to go through.
Right.
But what we know for this year is that I have a House 1 number or the governor's number, which I'm using. and the finance committee is using as we do our projections in the town council. We are, however, anticipating that that's the floor. So maybe during the budget process, a little bit more will be added. Okay. But the nice thing about revenue and the cherry sheet, and maybe we'll talk about this later, is that your revenue comes on page 1 of the cherry sheet.
Yep.
You got to turn it over and look at page 2, because that's where the takeaways are. And charter schools is a big part of it. MBTA assessment is a big part of it. So if page 1 goes up,
Right.
all right, it's the net that we're interested in, right? If page 2 goes up a little bit more, then we're in the hole.
Right.
But we're figuring on 10,500,000, 10,750,000. Maybe it goes to 11 million on state aid. But that's a big chunk of our,
Right.
that's 10% of our operating budget. So 10% is great. If it goes down a little bit, we can manage that. For some communities like a Lawrence or a Lynn, where that number is 50% of their operating budget and it goes down a little bit, they're in a lot more dire straits. So
Sure.
would I want more? Yes. Am I happy we're not reliant on it as much? Yes, as well.
Well, and that's one of the things that helped to get the town, as we've talked before, through the Great Recession as easily as we did compared to some of our surrounding
I don't know if it was
neighbors.
easy. We made some tough choices, and we rode the wave too. We had some luck. We had some new growth that really helped. Some things that came in that really helped us, and at this point in time, another nebulous number.
Another source is the MGLD. We're one of the few
Right.
towns that has its
Right.
own power company.
Right,
And that also provides a certain amount of income to the budget.
absolutely, and we have what's called a pilot program, a payment in lieu of taxes. So we don't go out and tax their equipment and their buildings as you would, maybe if it were National Grid or Essex Gas or somebody like
Right.
that. Finance Committee and the Board of Light Commissioners have agreed to a schedule, and that's about $900,000 a year this year, and it will be increasing a little bit for the next few years, and then we'll come back and revisit that. We also pay for the street lights, which you would pay to another electric company, and that money has been that amount has been frozen for the last couple of years, so that's nice.
Sure.
So that's not going up. So then we look at the net there, and so that's a positive. The other thing about the light department is that we do a lot of things together. Our DPW and our light department do a lot of things together, which really ends up saving both a lot of money. We manage some of their health care comes through us and what have you. We manage that, and we can charge administrative fees. So there's other ways that we get funding in from the light department. But the way that our DPW and they work together really gives the taxpayer and the homeowner or the renter or
Right.
people traveling through town a much better experience.
But speaking of the MGLD, we also see how beneficial having our own power company
Oh.
is, because we've seen so many fewer issues during storms and the
Right.
like compared to some of the surrounding neighboring communities.
Oh, I know. You hear some communities, they're not up for days and days.
Right.
I mean, here, if it's a few hours that you're not back up and running, that's very unusual
Right.
in Wakefield. So,
Of course, Lawrence is an extreme example. They're still
Absolutely.
trying to come back
They
from
still
last
are.
September.
I know it is very unfortunate and
Yeah.
very extreme.
So we're very, very fortunate here. Then we have expenses.
Oh, the expense side, yes.
Yep. We have operating budgets, fixed costs, capital, articles, and debt service.
Sure.
So the operating budgets, of course, would be the town government, DPW, fire, police, schools.
Schools, yeah, building, all of your think of all of your departments
Yep.
at town hall. I think that we try to bring those all in at a combined level of 4% or under. That seems like that'll be okay this year in that amount, so I'm very happy about that.
Including with the school
Including
department?
with the schools, yeah.
Because
it's
that's been a
combined.
controversy
Yeah,
the last couple
it's
of years.
combined, and I
Yeah.
think even with the school department, with their needs coming up a little bit higher,
Yeah.
I believe coming up a little bit higher, we will bring the entire municipal package in around the 4% level for budgets.
Fixed costs, that's the pensions,
That's
insurance.
pension, that's health insurance. We really are extremely lucky with our health insurance. I shouldn't say lucky, it's a lot of management, particularly by my human resources department. Amy Forziati and Karen Doucette have done a great job working. And I got to say, working with the employees and the unions and the retirees to make sure that, that we're able to get into the best health care plans for them at an affordability factor for the town. So
Right.
that's worked out really well. That's coming in at basically level funded from last year. So that's a $12 million budget,
Right.
part of our budget. So that is huge, huge to bring it in there.
Capital is down here, and these are only estimates right now, but capital is down here for $2 million.
Yeah, that's probably going to come in at 2.1.
Yep.
There's always a few other things that we want to put into the capital program. And
Well, we're still a few weeks away from everything being locked in.
right, yeah, but I think that's going to be locked in at around 2.1. A couple of highlights on that will be, it is rumored, well, you'll hear it here first, that the tennis courts at Vets Field will be redone and will be a combination tennis and pickleball, which is a sport that is taking the country by storm, and it's a combination of tennis and paddleball.
Yeah.
So it's we probably have 100 people that play at the Civic Center every Friday
Okay.
during the colder and winter months. So
Okay.
that's something pretty cool that we're going to be doing there.
What are some of the big projects, capital-wise, we're looking at? We're not talking here about the public safety building or anything
No.
special like
No,
that.
nothing special like that. Within the capital budget, I think, and we'll talk about some other articles in a little bit later. The Doyle School, looking
Yep.
at the Doyle School, which is our only school that doesn't have fire sprinklers in it. That's important.
Yep.
That is in the plan this year. Continuing the program of refreshing our fleet, whatever division it is. We got away from that 2 decades ago and really had to play a lot of catch up. So we're much better off when, at the overall scheme of things, is refreshing refreshing everything. You know, even then we have fire apparatus that are 20 plus years old. So there are those things that need to be done on the capital side. Continuing to look at some of the issues that we do need to take care of in the schools, even in schools or town buildings that are maybe set for some sort of demolition or renovation. And when you think about the high school, for instance, we still have to make sure that any asbestos tile is removed properly and taken care of. We still have to make sure that the heating and cooling system works there. So there is some money in there for some HVAC units. Because even if SBA were to snap its fingers, we get in it today, it's still going to be a number of years when you go through the planning process and the what have you to get, you know, the new school or renovated school or whatever you want to call it done.
Right.
So we can't not do some of these things. Anything that's a safety issue, we're gonna do. Number one, and then we look forward, maybe recreational. You know, what can we do for our seniors? I kind of let's look at each different group. You know, we're gonna looking at building a new playground at the Greenwood School, for instance. And you know, you build a playground today, and it absolutely should be handicapped accessible and safe and what have you.
Sure.
So those costs go up a little bit because of that, but I think we're
But worth it over time.
worth it. So
Yeah.
it's probably going to be 2.1, 2.14.
Articles, 2.5 million?
Yeah, articles, I may have underestimated articles. There are some things going on, one of which is a $500,000 article, which is to look at our DPW garage, which needs a lot of safety work done.
Well, that's what, about 40 years old?
Oh, maybe even more. Portions that even more, and really nothing's been done in it. So we are very concerned with safety of our employees and any visitors that will come there. So we're looking at putting about $500,000 into that facility, really as a Band-Aid. Even looking at floor drains that have collapsed and some of the lifts, what's on it. So how we store some of the apparatus and or supplies and tools there so they don't fall and hurt somebody. So
For-
that's something that we're really going to look at.
For viewers who are new to Wakefield, we're talking about the facility that's on North Avenue behind the Galvin.
Absolutely. Yep, that's exactly it. Yeah, the Boudiette facility.
Yep.
Really. So
Yep.
that is a concern. So that
Mm-hmm.
might put those articles up a little bit. Another item that we are looking that we're very excited about is the continuation of the downtown revitalization, rejuvenation, streetscape program, because that is really something that could transform what we're doing here. And that's a case where if we end up spending $1 million plus in planning and design, we are eligible to go on the state transportation improvement program list, or the TIP list that it's called, and get the $10 million that it takes to build the project from a combination of state and federal funds. So that is a very, very exciting project. We've had public forums. WCAT has been gracious enough to film them and to put them out for the public. A lot of input, and you're going to see us really look at, which is what we have to, multimodal transportation, whether it be biking, whether it be running, whether it be handicapped accessibility, and how does that all fit in with the revitalization and rejuvenation of our business districts, and just makes better streetscapes and a more pleasant atmosphere.
Right,
as you
more
go around.
inviting.
More inviting,
Yep.
exactly.
Bring people downtown.
So those two items are bumping up that number a little bit. But you know what, as I have kind of opined over the last few years, is that we have done a good job of building up our reserves. And our reserves are not only for sitting in the bank looking nice and
Right.
what have you. You can have too much doing that and sacrificing the quality of life, people. So using some of our reserves to do that,
Right.
to do these one-offs, do these one things to enhance the quality of life, isn't such a bad thing. Because, you know, you not only are saving to save for a rainy day, but you also may save to put an addition on your house.
Right.
So I think of it in that regard, is that that is part of the program here.
Debt service is going down.
Debt
year
service is
after
going
year.
down year after year, although we add more projects on
Yeah.
to take up the slack. Remember, debt service was the means by which this community, which was really ahead of its time, did a lot of public projects without going out for 2.5 override.
Right.
And what we did in Wakefield is we built the senior center.
Right.
We did handicap accessible project at Town Hall. We did the Woodville School,
Right.
and we
Dolbear
did the
School.
Dolbear School.
Library.
Library, senior center, library, it was the first one.
Yeah.
And we funded it through, bonded out the program, so like, think of it as a mortgage on your house. And each year put money into the debt service fund at a level, you know, so we would get that and we would pay things off, you know, over time. And if we kept with that, if we stopped doing new projects and we kept the money going in the same, then at the end of the, you know, in 5-10 years, we have a big pool of money to use on something.
Right.
But we knew that we were going to put more projects in. So put in a fire pumper, a ladder truck, a fire pumper. We'll probably put another fire truck in here this year. We will look at maybe the Greenwood roof at some time when we get the money coming back from that. Maybe a public safety building, you know, looking at that again. DPW garage, looking at that. So all of these items would be paid through this account. And what was great about this account is finally, Dolbear School, this is the last payment we're making on the Dolbear School this year.
Right.
Done. Next year will be the last payment on the Woodville School. Done. And Woodville School payment, yearly payment is about $560,000.
Right.
So that's gone, done. You know, it's a lot of money to pick up. Senior Center, next year, I want to say that's about $90,000 or so, done.
Yeah.
So in the next 3 years, we're going to have these buildings that are basically done. Everything needs work, but you know, it's kind of like having a mortgage burning party. We're not going to pay the mortgage anymore on it. So yeah, that's going to be that is going to create some opportunities down the road where we would put in, like the Walton School. That's
Right.
going through the debt service program. So we're building the Walton School, when things came down, and we're having our payments the same into the account because things have fallen off. So it really was something that we managed well, and we made sure the timing was right on some of these issues. So
And in the couple of minutes we have, just to go over some dates for people to keep in mind, we have annual town election coming up on April 23rd.
April 23rd, yeah, everyone votes at the Galvin Middle School.
Which has turned out to be not
Turned
too
out to
bad.
worked out fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have we seen any really significant drop in numbers of
No,
of
because,
people?
and it's also too early to make that call. Special elections are always a little slower. If there isn't a really contested primary, so the
Right.
town election will be an interesting dynamic. But then you can say, a town election a few years ago, there was a big race. Maybe there isn't a big race this year. So you've got to look at those things too. But that's worked out well. So we have that. We have town meeting on April 29th, I believe. That's the Monday.
First session.
First session.
Too early to start.
Too early to start, but it'll
Yep.
be at least more than one session.
Yeah.
We can agree on that
Yeah.
at this point.
On the next show, when we have the warrant in
We'll have the
hand,
warrant,
we'll
yeah.
have a better idea.
Yeah, I think the date that really precedes all that is the warrant is closed on the 28th of March. So that's
Right.
the last day any warrant
So a
articles
week
can get in
from
there.
tomorrow,
A week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
based on our tape date.
Yep. A week from, so the 28th of March.
Yeah.
And then we can put all that together and post it and have it out there and then what have you. So another cycle.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And just really quickly, we have debates coming up here on WCAT on April 1st. We have for the first time, WMGLD Board of Commissioners candidates
Yep.
at 7, and then we have Town Council at 8:30. We don't have a school committee race this year.
No, you have 3 for 3 seats.
It was looking like we weren't even going to have enough candidates for
Yeah.
school committee, but it's 3 for 3, so we're not doing them this year. And also, April 23rd, we'll be having election night at 8:30. So hopefully all of the candidates who want to come down and talk about their races and talk about the town, talk about town meeting, can come down and do that.
Great.
So we look forward to that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank
Steve.
you. Thank you.
We'll see you next month.